The morning sky above Seoul cracked like broken glass. Commander Park Tae-ho watched from the military command center as something impossible happened overhead. Massive, crystalline ships materialized out of nothing, their surfaces shifting between colors that had no names. The vessels hung in the air without sound, without fire from engines, without any sign of the physics that kept human ships flying. Tae-ho grabbed his communication device and spoke into it with a voice that stayed calm, despite the fear growing in his chest. "All units report status. I want eyes on every major city on Earth right now." The responses came back quickly, and each one carried the same message. The crystal ships had appeared everywhere at once. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Mumbai. 12 cities, 12 ships, all hanging in the sky like impossible dreams made real. Dr. Kim Hana burst through the command center doors, her lab coat still covered in coffee stains from where she had dropped her morning drink. She worked as a scientist who studied alien life, though until this moment she had only studied fossils and theories. Now real aliens floated above their heads. "Tae-ho, the energy readings are off every scale we have. These ships are pulling power from somewhere that our instruments cannot even detect." Before Tae-ho could respond, the air in the command center began to shimmer. A figure started to form in the empty space near the main viewing screen. It looked almost human, but stretched too tall, with skin that glowed like moonlight on water. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once, sliding into their minds without passing through their ears. "Primitive children of this small world, we are the Velathi. We have traveled across the vast emptiness between stars to bring you the gift of divine guidance. I am Supremarsh Velthanen, first among the gods who will now rule over you with wisdom beyond your understanding." The being raised one hand, and the massive viewing screen in the command center cracked down the middle without being touched. Around the room, electronic devices began to spark and smoke. Tae-ho felt something pressing against his thoughts, trying to push inside his mind and make him want to kneel down and worship this creature. He bit down hard on his tongue and used the sharp pain to keep his thoughts his own. "We do not kneel to anyone," Tae-ho said through teeth still clenched from biting his tongue. "Earth belongs to humans, and we will defend it." Velthanen turned toward him, and for a moment, Tae-ho saw something like surprise cross the alien's face. Most humans in the room had already dropped to their knees, their eyes empty and faces peaceful like people deep in prayer. But Tae-ho stood straight, and Hana beside him had also somehow kept her mind free from the alien influence. "Interesting," Velthanen said with a voice like wind through crystal caves. "Some of you have stronger wills than expected, but will alone cannot stand against divine power." Through the broken viewing screen, they could see outside where nuclear missiles rose from hidden silos around the world. Humanity's most powerful weapons streaked toward the crystal ships on trails of fire and smoke. Tae-ho allowed himself one moment of hope that human engineering might prove stronger than alien tricks. The hope died quickly. Velthanen raised both hands, and the missiles simply stopped moving in mid-air. Dozens of nuclear warheads hung frozen, like deadly ornaments against the sky. Then the alien closed his hands into fists, and the weapons began to glow. The metal and explosives transformed into pure light that scattered like gentle rain across the cities below. "Your toys cannot harm us," Velthanen said. "We are beings of energy and thought given form. We shaped matter when your species still lived in caves and feared the dark." Lee Do-jin ran into the command center carrying a device that looked like a tablet computer mixed with a radio. As an engineer who worked on the most advanced human technology, he understood energy patterns better than almost anyone on Earth. His face showed excitement mixed with fear as he looked at the readings on his device. "Commander, something strange is happening," Do-jin said quietly, so only Tae-ho and Hana could hear. "The energy levels from that thing spiked massively when it stopped the missiles, but now they are dropping fast, like a battery that used too much power at once." Velthanen seemed not to notice their quiet conversation. The alien spread his arms wide, and his voice reached every human mind on the planet at the same time. "Your leaders will come to us within one day. They will kneel before our divine wisdom and accept our guidance. Those who resist will find their minds reshaped until they understand the joy of serving true gods." The shimmering figure faded away, leaving behind only the smell of ozone and the sound of electronic equipment dying throughout the command center. Taeho looked around at his people, half of whom still knelt on the floor with empty smiles on their faces. The ones who could still think for themselves stared at him with questions in their eyes. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked Captain Yoon Seok-jin, one of the few officers who had resisted the alien mind control. His hand rested on his weapon, but they all knew guns would be useless against enemies who could stop nuclear missiles with their thoughts. Taeho walked to the broken viewing screen and looked up at the crystal ship that hung over Seoul like a second moon. "We gather everyone who can still think freely. We find out everything we can about these creatures. And we figure out how to kill something that calls itself a god." Over the next several hours, the governments of Earth began to surrender one by one. The President of the Americas, the Premier of the European Federation, the Emperor of the Pacific Alliance. Each leader appeared on global broadcasts, speaking with voices that sounded like their own, but with eyes that held no personality or free will. They announced humanity's acceptance of Velothi guidance and called for all humans to welcome their new divine rulers. Hana worked frantically at a computer that still functioned, trying to analyze the energy readings they had captured during Velthanen's appearance. "Taeho, look at this pattern. The alien's power output was massive, but it followed a very specific curve, almost like—" She paused and ran the numbers again. "Like someone lifting a heavy weight. Maximum effort followed by a recovery period." Do-jin nodded as he studied his own readings. The energy signature also shifted frequency 3 times during the display. If these beings are as powerful as they claim, why would their energy output be so inconsistent? Before anyone could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the building. Through the broken screen, they could see smaller craft descending from the main ship, heading for government buildings and military bases around the city. The invasion had moved from demonstration to occupation. Taeho gathered his equipment and weapon, knowing they would have to abandon the command center soon. "We move to the backup facility in the mountains. Anyone who wants to keep fighting, follow me. Anyone who wants to kneel to these things can stay here and wait for them." As they prepared to leave, Hana grabbed Taeho's arm. "I keep thinking about what that creature said, about reshaping minds that resist. What if they are not as confident as they appear? What if they need us to believe they are gods because they are not really gods at all?" Taeho looked back at the crystal ship one more time before they left the command center. "Then we better find out what they really are before they convince the rest of humanity to worship them forever." 6 months had passed since the crystal ships first appeared in Earth's sky. The world looked very different now. Massive temples made of the same strange crystal as the alien ships rose from the centers of major cities, their surfaces glowing with soft light that never dimmed. Humans in white robes walked the streets with peaceful smiles, their eyes empty of the spark that once made them truly human. They called themselves the Chosen and spoke only of serving their divine masters. Commander Park Ta-ho crouched behind a pile of broken concrete in what used to be downtown Seoul. The resistance base had moved 3 times in the past month as the Velothi hunting parties grew more efficient at finding humans who still thought for themselves. Now they operated from hidden caves in the asteroid mining stations far from Earth, striking quickly and disappearing before the aliens could respond. "Movement on the north side," whispered Kang Hyunwoo through his communication device. The young pilot had joined their group after watching the Velothi turn his entire squadron into mindless servants during the first week of occupation. He flew the fastest ship in their small fleet and had saved their lives more times than anyone could count. 3 Chosen heading toward the research facility. They move like they know exactly where they are going. Dr. Kim Hana pressed herself against the wall beside Taeho, her hands steady on the scanning device she had built from salvaged alien technology. "The energy patterns are definitely stronger near the facility. If my calculations are correct, they are holding at least 50 human scientists inside that building." The building in question had been Seoul University before the occupation. Now it served as one of many research centers where the Velothi forced human scientists to work on projects nobody fully understood. The Resistance had learned that some of the galaxy's best minds were being held in these facilities, their expertise used for alien purposes, while their free will slowly dissolved under constant psychic pressure. Lee Do-jin finished connecting, the last wire on his latest invention, and held up a device that looked like a weapon but hummed with energy instead of containing bullets. The quantum disruptor is ready for testing. If our theories are right, this should interfere with their connection to whatever power source they use. Dr. Choi Mi-ran checked the readings on her tablet for the third time in 5 minutes. The physicist had escaped from a Velothi research facility 2 months ago and brought with her information that changed everything the Resistance thought they knew about their enemies. The dimensional frequencies are still fluctuating. Their power definitely comes from somewhere else, somewhere outside our normal space. But the connection is not perfect. Through his binoculars, Tae-ho watched the chosen humans walk toward the university building with their unnaturally perfect coordination. Everything about them looked wrong, from the way they never stumbled to how they all turned their heads at exactly the same angle when a bird flew overhead. How long before the patrol circles back? 15 minutes, Hyun-woo replied from his position near their escape vehicles. But I am picking up energy spikes from the main temple. Something big is about to happen. Tae-ho made his decision quickly, the way he always did when lives hung in the balance. We go now. Do-jin, you and Mi-ran stay back and provide cover. With the disruptor. Hana, you are with me and we move fast. They ran across the open ground between buildings, their feet silent on the broken pavement. The chosen patrol had disappeared inside the university, and the streets lay empty, except for the soft blue glow that emanated from crystal formations growing out of the ground like alien flowers. Those crystals had appeared everywhere in the first month after invasion, and touching them filled human minds with overwhelming peace and the desire to serve the Velothi. The university's main door had been replaced with a barrier of pure energy that rippled like water made of light. Hana pulled out a small device she had created by combining human electronics with fragments of alien crystal. This should disrupt the barrier for about 30 seconds. After that, alarms will sound throughout the city. The barrier flickered and died, leaving an opening just wide enough for 2 people to squeeze through. Inside, the building had been completely transformed. The walls curved in impossible directions, and doorways led to rooms that seemed larger than the building that contained them. Alien writing covered every surface, symbols that hurt to look at directly and made the mind feel like it was trying to remember something important that stayed just out of reach. They found the human scientists on the 3rd floor, though Tae-ho suspected the 3rd floor existed in a different space than the rest of the building. 50 men and women sat at workstations that mixed human computers with alien crystal technology, their hands moving over controls, while their faces showed no emotion at all. At the center of the room stood a Velothi overseer, its tall form radiating. The same cold light as the crystal ships. The calculation matrices must be completed before the next lunar cycle, the alien said in a voice like winter wind through empty buildings. The dimensional gateway requires precise calibration, or the convergence will fail. Tae-ho signaled to Hana, and they moved closer, staying behind the strange equipment that filled the room. Through his communication device, he heard Do-jin's voice from outside the building. Commander, massive energy buildup from the temple district. Whatever they are planning, it is about to start. The Velothi overseer suddenly turned toward their hiding place, its glowing eyes focusing on the spot where they crouched. Primitive minds still cling to the illusion of freedom. Your resistance is noted and will be corrected. Tae-ho felt the familiar pressure against his thoughts as the alien tried to push into his mind and rewrite his personality. But 6 months of practice had taught him how to fight back against the psychic invasion. He focused on the pain in his old war injuries, using physical sensation to anchor his consciousness while the alien power washed over him like a tide of liquid peace. Now, he shouted into his communication device. Do-jin's quantum disruptor fired from outside the building, its energy passing through walls as if they were made of air. The beam struck the Velothi overseer in the center of its chest, and the alien screamed, a sound like crystal breaking under pressure. For just a moment, the creature's perfect control wavered, and it staggered backward like any normal being that had been hurt. In that instant of vulnerability, Hana fired her own weapon, a modified, human plasma rifle that she had altered to work with alien power frequencies. The shot caught the overseer in the shoulder, and blue liquid that might have been blood splattered across the crystal workstations. The alien fell to one knee, its glow flickering like a candle in strong wind. Around the room, the human scientists blinked and looked around with confusion returning to their faces. The psychic control that held them had been broken when their overseer was wounded. "Impossible!" the alien whispered, its voice no longer carrying the absolute confidence of a divine being. "We are eternal. We are beyond your primitive violence." But even as it spoke, more blue blood ran down its arm and dripped onto the floor. The creature that called itself a god was bleeding and afraid, just like any other living thing that had been hurt in a fight. Tae-ho stood up from behind the equipment and pointed his weapon at the wounded alien. "You bleed just like everything else that lives and dies. That makes you no god." Through the building's altered walls, they could hear alarms beginning to sound throughout the city. The other Velothi would come soon, bringing their full power against the humans who had dared to wound one of their kind. But the scientists were free, and the resistance had proven something important. "Go!" Tae-ho shouted to the rescued humans. "Follow the woman in the lab coat and do exactly what she tells you." Hana led the confused scientists toward the exit, while Tae-ho kept his weapon trained on the wounded alien. The creature tried to stand, but its legs shook, and more blood leaked from its wounds. For the first time since the invasion began, a Velothi looked weak and uncertain. "Your species will pay for this insult," the alien said, but its voice carried pain instead of authority. "The others will come, and your minds will be stripped away piece by piece." "Let them come," Tae-ho replied as he backed toward the exit. "Now we know you can be hurt." Outside, Hyunwoo had their vehicles ready and running. The group piled into the modified cars and trucks that Do-jin had equipped with quantum shields to block alien detection systems. As they drove away from the Tae University, Tae-ho activated his long-range communicator and sent a message to every resistance cell on Earth and in the outer colonies. "This is Commander Park Tae-ho. The aliens can be hurt. They bleed. They feel pain. They are not gods. Repeat, they are not gods. The war begins now." Behind them, the crystal temple in Seoul's center began to glow brighter as the Velothi leaders realized what had happened. But the message was already spreading across human space, carried by hidden transmitters and brave volunteers who risked their lives to share the truth. On 17 different worlds, humans who had been hiding in caves and ruins heard Tae-ho's words and felt hope return to their hearts. The gods were false, and false gods could be killed. The rebellion spread like fire across dry grass. Within 3 weeks of Commander Park Tae-ho's message, resistance cells on every human world had launched attacks against Velothi facilities. The aliens responded with increasing desperation, sending their Lieutenant Keir Valdris to lead mass conversion operations that would turn entire cities into willing servants. Tae-ho watched the reports flood in from their new base, hidden deep inside an asteroid mining complex. Each victory came with a terrible cost, as the Velothi abandoned their careful approach and began reshaping human minds by the thousands. Whole populations disappeared overnight, their personalities erased and replaced with empty devotion to their alien masters. Dr. Kim Hana worked without sleep in the makeshift laboratory they had built from salvaged equipment and captured alien technology. Her latest discovery had shaken everyone in the resistance leadership. "Look at these cellular samples," she said, pointing to images on her jury-rigged viewing screen. "These are tissue samples from the Velothi we wounded last month." Lee Do-jin leaned over her shoulder to study the strange structures visible in the microscopic images. "Those dark spots throughout the cells, what are they?" "Parasites," Hana replied with exhaustion clear in her voice. "But not like any parasites we understand. They exist partially in our dimension and partially somewhere else. I think they are what gives the Velothi their power." Dr. Choi Miran looked up from her own research station, where she had been analyzing energy patterns captured during recent battles. "That matches what I am seeing in the quantum readings. The aliens are not generating power themselves. Something else is generating it and feeding it to them through those parasitic organisms." Park So-young, a bioengineer who had escaped from a Velothi research facility on Europa, added her own findings to the growing picture. "The parasites are killing them. Look at these DNA sequences I managed to extract. The alien genetic structure is breaking down at the molecular level. Their cells are dying faster than they can regenerate. Taeho studied the evidence his team had gathered and felt a cold understanding settle in his mind. They are not here to rule us. They are here because they are dying, and they think we can save them. The implications hit everyone in the room at the same time. The godlike beings who had conquered human space were refugees running from their own extinction. Their displays of divine power came from parasitic organisms that were slowly consuming them from within. Humanity had become their last hope for survival. "But why take over our worlds?" asked Kang Hyun-woo from his position near the communication equipment. "Why not just ask for help?" Hana pulled up another set of data on her screen, showing genetic comparisons between human and Velothi DNA. "Because we are compatible. Human biology could potentially host these quantum parasites without the destructive effects, but the process would require completely rewriting human genetic structure." "They want to turn us into them," So-young said quietly. "Not just our minds, but our bodies too. They want to transfer the parasites to human hosts and abandon their dying forms." Admiral Song Ki-tae entered the laboratory at that moment, having just returned from a scouting mission to the outer system. The highest-ranking military officer to join the resistance brought news that changed their strategic situation completely. "The main Velothi fleet has arrived, 200 ships, maybe more. They are setting up some kind of massive installation near Jupiter." Doo-jin's quantum detection equipment began showing readings unlike anything they had seen before. Energy buildup on a planetary scale. Whatever they are building out there, it will have enough power to affect every human world simultaneously. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place with horrible clarity. The Velothi were preparing for a final conversion operation that would transform every human in the galaxy into suitable hosts for their quantum parasites. The scattered resistance cells and minor victories meant nothing against an effort of such massive scope. "We need to capture one of their leaders alive," Taeho decided. "Not to interrogate, but to prove to humanity that these creatures can be helped instead of feared." Jung So-hee, the medic who had been working with So-young to develop treatments for converted humans, looked up from her medical research. "I have been studying the samples we took from wounded Velothi. I think I can create a treatment that would slow the parasitic degradation without requiring human hosts." "You want to cure them?" Ki-tae asked with disbelief in his voice. "After everything they have done to us?" Taeho thought about the empty-eyed humans walking the streets of Earth's cities, their personalities erased by alien mind control. The anger burned in his chest like acid, but underneath the rage lay something else, understanding. They are not evil. They are desperate and afraid. Fear makes people do terrible things. Miran's equipment detected another massive energy spike from the direction of Jupiter. "Commander, whatever they are building is almost ready. We have maybe days before they activate it." The plan that formed in Taeho's mind was dangerous beyond anything the resistance had attempted. They would assault the Velothi flagship directly, fighting through the most powerful beings in the galaxy to capture their leader alive. The mission had almost no chance of success, but it was the only way to prevent the complete extinction of human free will. "Hyun-woo, how many ships can we put together for a direct assault?" Taeho asked. 30 fighters, maybe 40 if we strip the outer colonies of all their defenses," the pilot replied. "But Commander, those ships are armed with weapons designed to fight human opponents against Velothi technology." "The quantum disruptors work," Dojin interrupted. "I can modify our weapons to use the same frequency that disrupted their power during the university raid. It will not kill them, but it will level the playing field." So he gathered her medical supplies and the experimental treatment she had developed. "If we can get close enough to their leader, I can administer the cure. But someone will have to keep him still long enough for the treatment to work." Taeho looked around at his team, these humans who had chosen to fight impossible odds rather than surrender their freedom. "We leave in 6 hours. Anyone who wants to stay behind can help coordinate the evacuation of non-combatant populations." Nobody moved toward the exit. As they prepared for what might be their final mission, Hana made one last discovery that changed everything they thought they knew about their enemies. Deep in the genetic data she had extracted from Velothi tissue samples, she found evidence of something that should have been impossible. "Taeho, look at this sequence," she said with excitement and fear mixing in her voice. "This is human DNA, very old but definitely human." "That is impossible," So Young replied. "Humans have never been in contact with the Velothi before 6 months ago." But Hana's data was clear and undeniable. Buried deep in the alien genetic structure were traces of human heredity going back thousands of generations. "I think the Velothi used to be human. A very long time ago before the parasites changed them into something else." The revelation struck everyone silent. The godlike beings who had enslaved humanity were themselves the descendants of humans who had made a terrible bargain with quantum parasites eons ago. The cycle of transformation had been going on for millennia, with each generation becoming less human and more dependent on their parasitic symbionts. "Now they want to start the cycle over again," Tae-ho said with grim understanding, "using us as fresh hosts because their own bodies are finally failing." Kai-Tai checked his weapon and prepared for the assault on the Velothi flagship. "Then we better stop them before humanity becomes just another extinct species in their long history." The Resistance fleet launched from hidden bases throughout the asteroid belt, 37 small ships carrying humanity's last hope against creatures that had once been human themselves. As they flew toward the massive Velothi installation near Jupiter, Tae-ho wondered if they were fighting to save humanity or to save what remained of humanity's ancient cousins from their own parasitic masters. Either way, the battle would determine whether human free will survived or joined the countless other civilizations that had been consumed by the quantum parasites' endless hunger for new hosts. Through the viewports of their small ships, the Resistance fighters could see the Velothi installation growing larger as they approached. The structure looked like a crystal city floating in space, its towers reaching out toward the human worlds, with tendrils of energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. Soon they would know if gods could be forced to kneel, or if humanity would kneel forever. The Velothi flagship Divine Ascendant hung in space like a crystal mountain turned inside out, its impossible geometry hurting the eyes of anyone who looked at it directly. Commander Park Tae-ho gripped the controls of his fighter as the Resistance fleet approached the massive vessel, their quantum disruptors charged and ready for the battle that would decide humanity's fate. "All units, remember the plan," Tae-ho spoke into his communication system. "Yun-woo leads the first wave to create confusion. Do-jin and Mi-ran focus on disrupting their power systems. I take the boarding team directly to the command center." Kang Hyun-woo's voice came back steady, despite the fear they all felt. "Understood, Commander. Beginning attack, run now." The first wave of human fighters streaked toward the alien ship, their weapons firing streams of quantum energy that made the crystalline hull flicker and spark. The Velothi response was immediate and terrifying. Beams of pure thought lanced out from the flagship, striking human ships and turning their pilots into empty shells who forgot how to fly their own vessels. But something unexpected happened as the battle intensified. The quantum disruptors that Do-jin had built began to interfere with the Velothi mind control, creating pockets of mental static that protected human minds from alien influence. For the first time since the invasion began, humans could fight the Velothi on equal terms. "It is working!" Mi-ran shouted over the communication channel. "The disruptors are blocking their psychic attacks. They cannot control us while the fields are active." 3 Velothi fighters emerged from the flagship's docking bays, their forms shifting between solid matter and pure energy as they moved. But when they tried to simply appear inside the human ships using their matter manipulation abilities, the quantum fields pushed them back into normal space where human weapons could reach them. Tae-ho watched one of the alien fighters explode under concentrated fire from 2 Resistance ships. The sight filled him with savage satisfaction, but also with something like sadness. These creatures had once been human, corrupted by parasites that promised power in exchange for their humanity. "Boarding team, we go now while they are distracted," Tae-ho announced as he guided his ship toward a tear in the flagship's hull created by the ongoing battle. Lee Do-jin, Dr. Kim Hana, and Captain Yoon Seok-jin followed him through the gap in Se, the alien vessel's defenses. Inside the ship, reality worked according to rules that made no sense to human minds. Corridors stretched into infinite distance, while doorways led to rooms that existed in multiple places at once. The walls showed Scenes from 1,000 different worlds, some recognizable as human colonies and others alien beyond description. Stay close and do not look at the walls for too long, Hana warned as she checked her scanner for life signs. The ship is designed to confuse and disorient intruders. Focus on the energy readings from my device. They moved through passages that curved in directions that had no names, following the increasingly strong readings that indicated the presence of Velothi command personnel. Behind them, the sounds of battle echoed through the ship's structure as more human fighters managed to breach the hull and engage alien defenders in close combat. The first Velothi warrior they encountered stood 10 feet tall with arms that ended in claws made of crystallized energy. It spoke in a voice like breaking glass as it prepared to reshape their minds into loyalty. Primitive minds will be corrected. Resistance serves no purpose. But when the creature tried to invade their thoughts, Seokjin's portable quantum disruptor created a barrier that turned the psychic attack back on its source. The alien warrior staggered and clutched its head as its own mental powers rebounded against it. Dojin fired his modified weapon at the creature's center mass, the quantum beam disrupting the parasitic organisms that gave it power. For a crucial moment, the Velothi became just another living being vulnerable to physical harm. Taeho's plasma rifle finished what Dojin had started, cutting down the warrior with shots that would have been useless without the quantum disruption. The parasites are weakening, Hana observed as she scanned the dead alien. The quantum interference is affecting their connection to their power source. They fought their way deeper into the ship, each battle teaching them more about their enemy's weaknesses. The Velothi were individually powerful beyond human understanding, but their power came from outside themselves. Cut off from their parasitic symbionts, they became fragile and desperate. At the ship's center, they found a chamber that defied every law of physics. The room existed in all dimensions at once, its walls showing glimpses of the space between universes where the quantum parasites originated. At the chamber's heart stood Supremarch Velthanen, his form flickering between solid matter and pure energy as he struggled to maintain control over powers that were consuming him from within. "You have come to witness the birth of a new age," Velthanen said as they entered the chamber. "Soon every human mind will be cleansed of primitive thought and remade in divine perfection." Taeho could see the truth that the alien leader tried to hide. Velthanen was dying, his form becoming more transparent with each passing moment as the parasites drained his life force faster than he could regenerate it. "You are not creating a new age. You are ending your own species by feeding it to those things inside you." "We are immortal!" Velthanen screamed, his perfect composure finally cracking under the weight of his fear. "We have transcended the weakness of flesh." But even as he spoke, blue blood began to leak from his eyes and mouth. The quantum parasites were consuming him faster than ever before, accelerated by the stress of maintaining his powers during the battle. He raised his hands to strike down the humans who dared to challenge his authority, but the effort caused him to collapse to one knee as more blood poured from his wounds. Hana stepped forward with the medical treatment that Jung So-hee had developed, a combination of human medicine and quantum frequency therapy that could slow the parasitic consumption. "We can help you. We can stop what those things are doing to your people." "Help?" Velthanen looked at her with confusion replacing his anger. "You would help us after what we have done to your species." Taeho kept his weapon trained on the alien leader but did not fire. "Because that is what humans do. We help people who are suffering, even if they have hurt us." For the first time in millennia, Velthanen felt something he had forgotten existed. Hope mixed with shame as he realized what his people had become in their desperate attempt to survive. The parasites had not just given them power, they had stripped away their capacity for mercy and compassion, turning them into predators who saw other species only as potential hosts. "The installation near Jupiter," Velthanen whispered, as Hana administered the treatment that began to slow his parasitic infection. "It will convert every human simultaneously. Billions of minds reshaped in an instant. I cannot stop it now." Dojin's equipment detected massive energy buildups throughout the ship as other Velothi leaders realized their Supremarch had fallen. "Commander, we need to get out of here. The whole ship is becoming unstable." But Taeho made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Instead of fleeing or capturing Velthanen as a prisoner, he extended his hand to help the fallen alien to his feet. "Then we stop it together." Velthanen stared at the offered hand for a long moment, remembering what it meant to accept help from someone you had wronged. Slowly, painfully, he reached out and grasped Taeho's hand, allowing himself to be pulled upright by a member of the species he had tried to enslave. "The broadcast system," Velthanen said as strength returned to his voice thanks to Sohi's treatment. "If we can reach it, I can send a message to all Velathi forces. I can tell them the truth about what we have become. They fought their way through the dying ship together, human and alien working as allies for the first time since the invasion began. Behind them, the Divine Ascendant began to tear itself apart as its quantum systems failed and reality reasserted itself within the vessel's walls. When they reached the broadcast chamber, Velthanen spoke into the communication system with a voice that carried across every Velathi ship in the galaxy. "My people, we have become the very parasites we sought to escape. We have forgotten what it means to live without causing death. The humans offer us redemption if we have the courage to accept it." The message spread from ship to ship, carried by quantum transmissions that could not be blocked or intercepted. Across human space, Velathi commanders heard their Supreme Arch's words, and for the first time in ages, they remembered what they had lost in their bargain with the parasites. As the flagship exploded around them, Taeho and his team escaped in a stolen Velathi shuttle with Velthanen as their unexpected passenger. Below them, the installation near Jupiter powered down as Velathi engineers followed their leader's orders and abandoned the conversion project. The sight of their fallen god kneeling beside his former enemies sent shockwaves through both human and Velathi forces. The war was not over, but for the first time since the crystal ships appeared in Earth's sky, peace seemed possible. Velthanen looked out at the stars through the shuttle's viewport and spoke quietly to Taeho. "Your species may be the first to show us mercy instead of fear. Perhaps there is hope for both our peoples." 6 months after the battle that changed everything, the galaxy looked like a place where two very different species were learning to live together. The crystal temples still rose from Earth's cities, but now they served as medical centers where human doctors worked alongside Velathi healers to remove the quantum parasites that had corrupted both species for countless generations. Commander Park Tae-ho stood in what had once been the Soul Temple, watching Dr. Kim Hana and Park So-young work with Velthanen to perfect the treatment that could free the Velathi from their parasitic masters. The former Supreme Arch looked more human now, his glowing skin dimmed to a soft radiance that no longer hurt to look at directly. The quantum organisms that had given him godlike power were being systematically removed, leaving behind something closer to what his species had been before their ancient bargain with entities from outside normal space. "The latest batch of volunteers shows a 90% success rate," Hana reported as she studied the medical data on her screen. "We can now remove the parasites without killing the host in almost all cases." Jung So-hee looked up from her patient, a young Velathi who had volunteered for the experimental treatment despite knowing the risks. "This one is responding well. His vital signs are stabilizing and the parasitic load is decreasing steadily." But not all humans were ready to forgive so easily. General Nam Jun-seo had formed a faction that demanded complete surrender from the Velathi, arguing that showing mercy to their former oppressors would only lead to future betrayal. His supporters controlled several outer colonies and had refused to participate in the joint medical programs. "They enslaved us," Jun-seo declared during a heated session of the new Galactic Council. "They turned millions of humans into mindless servants. Why should we help them when they would have destroyed us without hesitation?" Tae-ho, now serving as humanity's first galactic diplomat, understood the anger but also saw the bigger picture that was emerging from their research. Because they are us. The Velathi are what humans became when they made the same bargain we were about to be forced into. If we let hatred guide us now, we become no better than the parasites that consumed them. Lee Do-jin and Dr. Choi Mi-ran had made discoveries that supported Tae-ho's argument. Deep in the quantum research facilities that the Velathi had built, they found evidence of the true scope of the parasitic infection. The entities that create these organisms have consumed hundreds of species across thousands of years, Mi-ran reported to the council. Every advanced civilization eventually encounters them and faces the same choice: submit to parasitic enhancement or be destroyed by those who already have. The most shocking revelation came when they analyzed the quantum signatures of the parasitic entities themselves. The creatures existed primarily in the spaces between dimensions, feeding on the life force of beings in normal space while offering temporary power in return. But their ultimate goal was not symbiosis or even predation. It was reproduction. Each infected species becomes a breeding ground, Dojin explained as he showed the council his research findings. The parasites use their hosts to spread to new civilizations, growing stronger with each species they consume. Eventually, they produce enough offspring to invade parallel universes and start the cycle over again. Admiral Song Kite studied the data with the eye of a military strategist who had spent his career planning for threats that seemed impossible. So we are not just fighting for our freedom. We are fighting to prevent these things from spreading to other realities where different versions of humanity might exist. The revelation changed everything about humanity's relationship with the Velothi. Instead of seeing them as conquerors to be defeated, humans began to understand them as fellow victims of a cosmic infection that threatened all life in the galaxy. The resistance against parasitic influence became a joint effort between both species. Kang Hyun-woo had taken command of the combined human Velothi fleet that now patrolled the outer systems, watching for signs of new parasitic incursions. Long-range sensors are detecting dimensional disturbances near the Centauri system, he reported during a strategy meeting. The pattern matches what we saw before the Velothi first arrived in our space. The news sent urgent energy through the council chambers. The parasites were sending another infected species toward human territory, probably following the quantum signatures left behind by the Velothi expedition. This time, however, Earth would not face the invasion alone. Velthanen stood before the Joint Council and spoke with a voice that carried none of his former arrogance. My people were slaves to the parasites for so long that we forgot what freedom felt like. But you have shown us something we thought was lost forever: the courage to resist without becoming the thing you fight against. The former god knelt before the council, not in submission, but in respect for the decision they were about to make. I request permission to lead a joint fleet against the incoming threat. Let the Velothi prove that we remember what it means to fight for others instead of fighting to dominate them. Captain Yoon Seok-jin, who had lost more than most during the invasion, spoke for many when he said, 6 months ago, I would have shot you on sight. But I have seen what the parasites do to minds, how they twist good intentions into evil actions. If you are willing to fight against them, then you are welcome at my side. The preparations for the coming battle brought out the best in both species. Human engineers worked with Velothi technicians to build weapons that could disrupt parasitic organisms across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Doctors from both civilizations developed treatments that could prevent parasitic infection, even during combat. Most importantly, soldiers from both species trained together, learning to fight as allies instead of enemies. Dr. Park So-young made a breakthrough that changed their understanding of the parasitic entity's weakness. They cannot survive in the presence of what I am calling cooperative quantum resonance, she explained to the research team. When two different species work together in perfect harmony, their combined mental energy creates a field that is toxic to the parasites. The implications were staggering. The entities that had conquered countless civilizations, by turning them against each other, were vulnerable to the one thing they could never understand: genuine cooperation between different forms of life. As the infected fleet approached the outer edge of human space, the combined human Velothi defense force prepared for a battle unlike any that had been fought before. Instead of trying to destroy their enemies, they would try to save them by demonstrating that freedom from parasitic control was possible. Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the flagship Redemption, a vessel built with technology from both species, and crewed by volunteers who had chosen to risk their lives for strangers they had never met. Beside him, Velthanen prepared to face his own kind, who were still enslaved by the quantum parasites. Remember, Tae-ho announced to the fleet, we are not fighting to win. We are fighting to heal. Every ship we disable, every enemy we capture, alive, is another chance to break the chains that have held civilizations in slavery for millennia. The battle began, as the infected fleet entered the system, their ships crackling with parasitic energy and their crews broadcasting demands for immediate surrender. But instead of weapons fire, they were met with something the parasites had never encountered before: a coordinated effort by former enemies to offer help instead of harm. Human and Velothi ships worked in perfect synchronization, their quantum disruptors creating fields of cooperative energy that disrupted the parasitic control over the invading fleet. One by one, the attacking vessels powered down as their crews broke free from mental domination and realized they had been used as weapons against innocent people. When the last enemy ship surrendered, Tae-ho looked out at the combined fleet that now included representatives from 3 different species, all united in their determination to end the parasitic threat forever. The entities that had fed on civilization for eons had finally encountered something they could not corrupt or control: the willingness of different species to sacrifice for each other's freedom. Velthanen knelt beside Tae-ho as they watched. Former enemies embrace each other in celebration of their shared liberation. Your species has taught the galaxy something that we thought was lost forever: that true strength comes not from power over others, but from the courage to stand together against darkness. Tae-ho helped the former god to his feet, no longer seeing an alien conqueror, but a friend who had learned to choose hope over fear. Then let us make sure that lesson spreads to every world that needs it. The age of false gods is over. The age of cooperation has begun. In the months that followed, the joint fleet would carry that message to distant stars where other species struggled against parasitic infection. They would teach the galaxy that no matter how different civilizations might be, they all shared the same capacity for courage, compassion, and the choice to help instead of harm. The aliens had called themselves gods, but humanity had taught them something better than divinity. They had learned to kneel not in worship, but in service to something greater than themselves: the hope that all intelligent life could choose freedom over fear, cooperation over conquest,